Good afternoon, everyone. Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Again, welcome. I want to take a brief moment to thank our ASL interpreters, Sienna and Laura, for joining us today. We are also utilizing the Zoom live transcript service, which users can access at the bottom of your screens. Good afternoon again, and welcome to the first Storytelling Circle, part of the Public Art and Community Dialogue Program. I am Dr. Paul Buckley, Vice President, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Fred Hutch Cancer Center. I lead the work of our department called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Core. That's the DEI Core. And we have the awesome mission of integrating best and promising anti-racist DEI principles and practices across Fred Hutch. Today, as a part of our dialogue, we are introducing our selected artist from Indigenous communities, someone who impressed us with their work and perspectives about art and storytelling. The Artist Selection Committee was very impressed with the ways in which their artwork centers humanity and tribal culture. In their application and throughout the interview, it was clear that their approach as an artist, a storyteller, and educator aligns with our goals for this program. So before we introduce the artist to you, it will be important for you to receive a brief overview of the Public Art and Community Dialogue Program. What is this really about? And that overview will be delivered by two members of my team, Casey Bray and Dr. Joshua Marceau.
Welcome, everyone. So as some of you know, this is our second iteration of the Public Art and Community Dialogue Program, or those that don't know, this program is an extension of our efforts to drive transformative change in our organization and the greater community. This is our way of taking an authentic and affirming and active approach to sharing the message that Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other minoritized and underrepresented people matter to us in our science, in our care, in our community, and beyond. So the driving strength and motivation of this program is really our interest in deepening our institutional community relationships. So this program provides a great opportunity for all of our selected artists to connect, to explore and align with each other and other representatives from the Fred Hutch to inform their final commissioned work and future community initiatives. So these art installations, which there's a banner and a flag, will serve to create a broader and more connected message of solidarity to these communities.
All right, thank you everybody and welcome. So I'll go over the purpose of the community dialogues. So these dialogues provide an opportunity for employees and the broader Seattle community to be in dialogue about community solidarity and our pursuit of equity in research and in healthcare. So these activities foster ongoing dialogues with marginalized and oppressed communities to inform our commitment to inclusion and how we represent that commitment in visual form with the art. So dialogue is it's an opportunity, to share stories, our lived experiences, our reflections, history, culture, and aspirations for a holistic and sustained health. And so we invite the community that's joining us today to engage in the storytelling circle that centers on solidarity, history, culture, and traditions. And this is a two-way interaction between the listener and the storyteller. So we encourage all the participants to use this time for personal reflection and connection. And these stories and reflections will inform our commitment to inclusion, and again, how we represent that commitment in visual form. So I want to thank our artist selection committee members, Craig D., Twyla Gleason, and Lenora Starr for helping us guide this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua and Casey. And again, thanks to our artist selection committee for their work and continued work. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you our selected artist, Mr. Roger Fernandes. Roger Fernandes is a Native American artist and storyteller whose work focuses on the art and legends of Coast Salish tribes of Western Washington. He is an enrolled member of the Lower Elwha Nixclaim tribe and has a Bachelor of Arts in Native American Studies from the Evergreen State College and a master's degree in Whole Systems Design from Antioch University. Roger has worked in the field of Native education for over 40 years and uses both art and storytelling as basic pathways for Indigenous learning. As an educator, Roger uses classroom presentations for students and trainings for teachers to utilize their inherent gifts of art and story. As a storyteller, Roger helps the audience see the meaning of storytelling in their modern lives. And as an artist, he strives to have them use this gift to enhance communication and learning. So we are incredibly excited to have him, and that he has us today and in this project. And so Roger, please come on screen. Welcome and congratulations, and thank you so very much. I'd like to just talk with you a little bit so folks can have a little bit of a flavor of who you are before you do all the things you will do this morning, for those of you who may not know Roger or have not met him in this kind of situation before. Roger, during your interview, you shared your perspective about how stories, struggles, and spirit can communicate with each other through art. Can you share more about this and the meaning of it?
Sure. Storytelling is not exclusive to Native American people. It is a universal human process of sharing, teaching, learning, understanding. And so what I've done is follow the footsteps of my elders who use storytelling as a way of creating connections with people, to create opportunities for discussions and learning from culture to culture. Tell us the stories of your people. Tell us the stories they tell. And so I think some of the words that are used, sometimes we have to go back and make sure people understand the meaning and context of the word. To understand sometimes a Native perspective, you might look at a human being as more complex than simply a mind and a body, which is the Western view of the human. You have a physical body and you have a mind, brain, and that's defines who you are. Whereas for Native people, there are various other elements, basic elements of who you are, like your spirit, the thing that connects you with the universe and separates you at the same time. That's your challenge, to understand the place of your spirit in your life in the world, and also your emotional life, that you have a heart that guides you, And sometimes that heart is troubled and we have problems that come out of it. But again, we're aware that we're much more complex than a mind and a body. So when I use the word spirit, I'm talking about not religion, but an element of who you are that some tribes call the great mystery. The idea of this is something we can see and understand and practice, but it's very hard to explain it. Again, they call it the great mystery. And so art is one of those ways that you can tap into spirit, and you can say some things that maybe might be difficult for just your logical linear mind to wrap itself around and find the appropriate language, the appropriate examples. And so using art that's drawn from stories, you're combining many elements of some basic human communication and something that Native people still strive to do. Through our ceremonies, through our songs, through our art, we share things that we feel emanate from our heart. I know as a child, when I began to draw and paint all the time, and I did as a little kid, that's what I wanted to do. That's all I did. I didn't know where those things came from sometimes. Where did this come from? I realized as a little child, I had a spirit, what we call the creative spirit, that would come out in my work. And again, I see every human being as having that capacity to create art, but also they have the same capacity to learn and share stories. So if I have a mission in the world, is to really help people at least try to learn one story from their ancestors, maybe one link to one design from their ancestors, wherever they're from in the world, and begin to share that thing. And what I've seen happen so often is that begins to grow. More and more stories, more and more art. You've created a whole new vocabulary for yourself.
Thanks so much, Roger. As you were speaking, another question came to mind because I was reflecting on this, what you explained as the great mystery of spirit, something that's hard to explain. And I was reflecting on the power of gathering, being in community. I often think that when I'm in community, I have a spiritual experience. And I wonder if you would speak to that a little bit as we gather today, even in the spiritual space.
Sure. I want to just kind of spin off of what you said. I was born and raised in the city of Seattle, so I had to go back and learn my native culture. I was close, but I wasn't raised in it on a day-to-day basis, and so I had to go back and learn things and develop many elder mentors that helped me. And one of them was the elder from Nisqually, and he said our people, when they would gather, they would have guests coming to their home for some ceremony or celebration, and they would not sit and talk with each other right away. He said the first thing they would do is sit and at opposite sides of the room, and they would feel each other's spirits. They would feel each other's spirits to make that spiritual connection first with the foundation of communication they wanted to establish. And there is a welcome song my people sing, the Exclaim people, the Clallam people, and the words translate as people are coming to your village in their canoes. You're singing, I know what is in your heart. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. And so again, the people are looking beyond the physical manifestation of who we are, the impressive mental things that we can, draw upon, but really, what is your spirit? And so it is an elemental part of our culture to talk about the spirit of things. And I'll mention very quickly, because it just strikes me, there's a book called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. It's about Hmong culture in California, refugee immigrant culture, and their interpretation of certain what Western culture defines as a physical illness, like epilepsy. The Hmong people see it as a spiritual illness, and they want to incorporate both. It's a powerful book about cross-cultural communication, and the word spirit is in the title, so it just kind of rang, in my consciousness that, oh, that's a wonderful book to refer people to. An indigenous culture from Southeast Asia that's moved to the United States, and their struggles are to understand, how do we share our spirit? How does our spirit play into the healing of our child who has epilepsy?
Thanks so much, Roger, for your wisdom and insight. We really appreciate you being here. And so I'm excited to be in community with you and others today. And please take it away. Thank you.
All right. Well, Hutchinson, thank you. Siam, good people, special people, high-class people. Hutchinson, Siam, Hutchinson is Chayacha. I'm so happy to be here to have a chance to share some stories with you and to share some thoughts and ideas from you as well, to hear your interpretations, your impressions, your feelings about the story I'm going to share. As a storyteller, I was taught that in the old days, if you had a problem in your life that you couldn't solve, a big problem, and you worked on it and thought about it, tried to solve, you couldn't solve the problem, what you would do and would go to the elders in your village, the old people. You would sit with the old people and talk about your problem, be it with your partner, your children, your neighbor, your work. You would sit with them and tell them the problem. And when you were done telling them that big problem that you couldn't solve, the elders would usually say, "Let me tell you a story." And then they would tell you a story that had nothing to do with your problem. I mean, you're telling about a problem with you and your neighbor, and they're telling about a chipmunk and a grizzly bear. What were they doing? Why were they just telling you this story that had no connection? Well, this is what I was taught. This is what I believe. The elders knew you had the answer inside you already. They had wisdom. They understood this. You have the answer inside you already. What you need is a way to find that answer. And so the story was the way to find the answer. It is the way to find the answer. It's not the answer. It is the way to help you find your answer. And so as I am called by different groups like this group, we're looking at an initiative, something we want to change, something we want to create. What might we do? My first thought is, let me tell you a story, because our human condition is constant. We are humans. We have new technologies and all kinds of new elements of our modern life, but we still are human. We still respond to stories. Stories still live within us. So I'm going to share you a story that talks about, well, I'm not going to explain what it talks about. I'm just going to tell you the story, because your job after the story is done is to reflect upon this story. And in the old days, before reading and writing, before literacy, people understood this. My elders told me some stories. What is the meaning of that story to me? Why did they tell me that story? What has that got to do with, the problem I'm talking? And so you would be reflecting, because you knew the story is told for a reason. So I'm going to tell you this story that comes from my people, the Nextlayan people, the Tlalan people, the Strong people. And I'm doing it for a reason. But again, I'm not going to explain the reason. I'm just going to tell the story. So a long time ago, in a Nextlayan village across the water from Seattle, there lived a little boy. Now, this little boy, he couldn't run very fast. He was really very slow, and he was very clumsy. He would fall down a lot. And so he would be clumsy and slow, and the other children would laugh at him and make fun of him all the time. They would tease him and call him slow one, because he was so slow. And they would always say, "Slow one, what's wrong with you? Why can't you run? You're so falling down all the time." And they would tease and they would torment him. And they would call him slow one. And he couldn't catch things either. His hands couldn't hold things, and he couldn't throw them where he wanted. And so they would laugh at him for that as well. And so they called him slow one. And whenever they called him slow one, it hurt his heart, but he never told anyone. Well, he stopped playing with the other children because of all that teasing and making fun of him, ridiculing him. And so he would be by himself all the time. Very sad, very lonely little boy. One day he was so sad and lonely, he left the village. He walked out into the woods. He left the village, walked out into the woods. And he walked for a long ways following the trails. And way out in the middle of the woods, right by this trail, was a bush. And under the bush, he heard a little voice that was crying, "Hoo, hoo, hoo." And the boy was curious. He crawled under the bush and he found a little baby wolf, a wolf cub, sitting there shaking and crying. The boy picked up that little wolf and began to pet it. "Oh, little wolf, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. I'm here now. I'll take care of you. Don't be sad. I'll take care of you, little wolf. Don't worry." He was petting that little wolf, and the little wolf was so happy. His little tail started to wag. It started to lick his fingers. And the boy was so happy holding that little wolf. Well, he heard some noises. Something was coming through the woods, and he got frightened. And he took the baby wolf and he climbed up into a tree nearby. And from up in the tree, he looked around, and something was coming through the woods. It was a wolf coming through the woods. It was the mother wolf returning to where she left her baby. When the mother wolf got to that bush where she left her baby, she looked around. Where's my little one? What happened to my baby? And then the baby saw its mother and cried out. She looked up, and there's a baby up in the tree. That little boy's holding her baby. The mother wolf said, little boy, give my little baby to me. Give my little one back. And the boy said, no, you must give me something first. And the mother wolf thought, she said, wait here, little boy. She ran out in the woods and caught a rabbit, brought the rabbit back, dropped the rabbit at the base of the tree. There, I give you this rabbit. Now give my little one back. And the boy said, no, you must give me something special. And the mother wolf thought, she said, wait here, little boy. And she ran back to her wolf village and told the other wolves, there's a little boy who is holding my baby and won't let him go. He says he wants something special. What does he want? The other wolf said, you must ask him what he wants. Ask him. So she ran back and said, little boy, what is a special thing that you want? What do you want? He said, I want to be able to run like the other children. I want to be fast like them. I don't want to be slow anymore. I don't want to fall down all the time. I want to catch things and play catch up. I want them to stop calling me slow one. And the mother wolf said, little boy, come back with me to my wolf village. Maybe we can help you. And so the little boy climbed down the tree holding that baby wolf and followed the mother wolf all the way back to the wolf village. When they got there, the wolf people gathered around this little boy in a big circle and they looked at him. Now, wolves are more powerful than us pitiful people. They can hear things we can't hear. They can smell things we can't smell. They can see things we can't see. And so the wolves were looking at this boy with their wolf eyes, and they could see something that was invisible to humans. Even this little boy could not see what they were seeing. They could see with their wolf eyes. There were plants, invisible plants, growing all around his arms, all around his legs. There were plants no one could see, no humans, but they could see them. And they knew this is why he was clumsy, why he was slow. And so the wolves sang a powerful song and they took off, pulled off, removed all the invisible plants and vines from all around his arms and legs. And then they said, little boy, run to that tree over there. And he ran, and he couldn't believe how fast he was running, and he didn't fall down. He ran back. They threw things to him, and he could catch them and throw them back. And so the wolves had helped this boy. They had helped him. And the boy said, thank you, Stachin. Thank you, wolf. Thank you, Stachin. I want to go home now. Can you take me home? And the wolf said, of course we will. And the wolf people took that boy all the way back to his village. And he walked into the village just as the children were playing a game, a racing game. They were seeing who the fastest runners were in the village. They were playing a game, and the boy watched them as they were getting ready. There were two teams lined up against each other. You might have run a race like this before. Two teams lined up against each other. And one by one, a runner from each team would run in their game, run down to the beach and touch this big rock, then run all the way back and touch the next runner. And they would run to the beach and touch the rock and run back and touch the next runner. So like a relay race, they were seeing who the fastest runners were. And so that boy walked up and he got in one of the lines. And the children of that line turned around and said, hey, slow one, get out of here. We don't want you in our team. But he didn't say anything, just moved up waiting his turn. They were yelling at him, come on, go on, get out of here. You're going to make us lose. We don't want you in our team. Go on, slow one. But he didn't say anything, just kept moving up, waiting his turn. The children on the other team, they saw him and they were laughing and pointing. Oh, look, slow one's on their team. He's going to fall down and cry. We're going to win now. But he didn't say anything, just kept moving up, waiting his turn. And finally, it was his turn to run. He was the last runner on his team. And the other team, their last runner, was already down on the beach touching that big rock. So they were so far ahead, there's no way he could win. But he began to run as hard and as fast as he could. He ran as hard and as fast as he could. They say he ran faster than a deer, ran down and touched that rock and turned and ran all the way back as hard as he could. And he just barely beat the runner on the other team. And so the boy won the game for his team. He was the fastest runner. And the children, they were amazed, the other children. They said, wait a minute, you're slow one. You can't run. You fall down. What happened? How come you can run so fast now? What happened? And the boy explained how the wolf people had removed the invisible plants and vines from his arms and legs. And now he could run and play with the children in the village. And the children reflected. They said, well, that means you're not slow anymore. So we won't call you that name. We will give you a new name. Your new name will be Little Wolf Brother. And that is all the story my people call The Boy and the Wolves. And I told you that story because there are things within the story, as a storyteller, I believe if you reflect upon, you might find useful in the conversations that you'll be having in this group, in this initiative. But again, my job is done. I'm telling the story. That's what I do. And I tell the story. But now your job begins because again, you would understand in a time when storytelling was the way all humans did things instead of relying on literacy, reading and writing. And so you would understand now, what was that story about? What did that mean to me? And so that story again, well, I'm going to explain very quickly. What makes a story is that something changes. Something changes. It's one way in the beginning, a person's one way, something's one way, at the end it's different. Something has changed. And the second thing that makes a story and not a report just tells you what's there, is that you have feelings about those changes, the process of transformation. You have feelings about that story. You have feelings about the things a character did or was done to them. You have feelings. So a story, it's about transformation and feelings, the emotions that come with that story and the transformation occurring within the story. So again, those are things to reflect upon. One other thing about stories, very important. There are two kinds of stories. One of my old teachers taught me this. There's one called the long time ago stories that I just told you. A long time ago in a village across the water, little boy. That's called long time ago story. That's stories your culture tells you, that your culture has been passing on for generation upon generation. And then there's what's called the remember when story. That is your story. Do you remember when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl? Do you remember when whatever it is? Something that we all might be able to talk about and share and remember together. And so those are two kinds of stories. Long time ago story, the mythic legend stories we call them. And you also have the remember when stories, your personal recollections, your personal experience stories. I believe those two stories need to weave together. They weave together like a basket. The stories your culture tells you and teaches you from the time you're a little toddler, and also the stories that you've experienced in your life that you share with other people. And sometimes those things blend together. We create a new story. So I do what other storytellers don't do generally because I'm an educator and I approach education in a certain way. What I'd like to do is give you all a chance to talk about these stories. And I think I'm going to handle the organization of the breakout rooms. We're going to put you into breakout rooms. And I think you've been assigned those rooms is how this works. And I'd like you to look at this story, share with each other the things you see in this story that have a metaphorical meaning perhaps, or an analogy, something that's drawn from the story in a story way, or whatever you want to consider it. There are certain questions, as an educator, I find that it will help if I maybe frame a few questions for you, but you can certainly go beyond these questions. You can certainly have your own questions that maybe there's something you want to say that is outside the realm of the questions I'm asking. Like one of the questions I love to ask, especially little kids, because they're the best philosophers in the world, little kids, is when the mother wolf found the boy holding her baby in the tree, and she said, "Give my little baby to me." And that little boy said, "No." The mother wolf could have been very angry. She could have snarled at him. She could have jumped at him and snapped at him. She could have yelled at him and threatened him, but she didn't. She didn't. Do you remember what she did? Well, why didn't she respond in a way that we might have no problem understanding? I can understand that. The little boy's holding my baby up in a tree, but she did not respond that way. Why do you think that is? At the end of the story, if you hear a story and you hear something repeated over and over in the story, that means it's pretty important. Pay attention to it. And so at the end of the story, a line that was repeated at least 3 or 4 times, slow one, get out of the line. We don't want your team, get out of here. You're going to make it. But the little boy didn't say anything, just kept moving up waiting his turn. Moving up, waiting his turn. Moving up, waiting his turn. What do you think the meaning of that act of not saying anything, just moving up, waiting his turn? What do you think that means? Another thing is when the boy was, in the beginning of the story, was essentially an outcast in his own village, by the children at least. Where was the rest of the community? The elders, the adults, the parents? Where do you think, what is your imagination tells you? What was the communal response to the way this boy is being treated? And so again, that says, that can go in a lot of directions. But again, where is the community's involvement in this story? The boy is essentially on his own, having to do all this transformation by himself. But again, that's something to think about. Another element of this story that I think is very powerful, and little kids love to talk about this one too, and so do elders and college students. It's the invisible plants and vines. The invisible plants and vines. So our conscious, linear logical mind, there's no such thing as invisible plants, vines that grow around people's arms and legs. But again, I'm like, you step beyond that. Look at the idea of what might that represent? What could that represent maybe in the work that you do? What are things that, well, I'm not going to explain more than that. I'll let you determine what that might mean to you. So again, those are a few topics that you could discuss, but you might see some other things in this story that you believe are worth looking at a little deeper, about talking about a little more, sharing other people, bouncing them off other people to wonder, how did that happen? I mean, why would you say that happened? To share these kind of ideas from the stories is essentially to share philosophy. You are sharing some of your philosophical views of the world and how humans live in the world in a good way and how humans interact in a good way. And so again, that's what I'm going to ask you to do for a few minutes. And if it's like most Zoom rooms, breakout rooms, it means that we'll let you know when it's about to close. And then we're going to come back and have you, each group that wants to, share maybe some thoughts they had about any of those questions, or maybe you can come up with another question from this story. But again, like I said, we're getting into philosophy, which is a wonderful place to be. So we'll turn you into your breakout rooms. And if I'm reading it right, it means all you have to do is push the join button. You join a few other people and talk about this story and what you feeling, what your response, your emotional response to this story. And you could even talk about the biggest, that transformation from an outcast, lonely, sad little boy to receiving a new name and having a new status in the tribe. How did that all happen? Can you explain that simply? So again, we'll let you go to the breakout rooms. We'll let you know when we're going to return and have some feedback from people as to what that story might mean to them. All right?
So in our group, we did talk a little bit, Roger, about what you were saying about the vines. We got a little bit deeper into that as well. And one of the things that we mentioned was just this idea that the more that you hear something about yourself, the more it becomes ingrained in you, especially if you don't actively question it or have any reason to question it. And so, you know, those kinds of comments and like different life experiences can really deeply affect you. And if you don't have an alternative mirror or another source to sort of, I guess, check on yourself with, it can be easy to sort of get lost in all of the vines, like the negativity of that situation. So that's one of the things that we talked a little bit about in our group.
Okay. Another group, and someone from the group either just volunteered, unless they appointed you somehow, whatever, share your thoughts.
I can share. This is Delia
Good.
Pinto Santini. Thank you so much. I first wanted to say thank you so much. It's so beautiful to hear stories, and you are a great storyteller because you are like, you want to be there with the wolves and the boy and everything. It's so beautiful. Our team was awesome in the sense that we all express what the story talked to us, and so we found 3 meanings because we were 3 in the group, and it was beautiful to see how the same story can tell you three different things with three different people. So I want to share what it meant for me. I wanted to connect it with the work here, the DEI core work at Fred Hutch. So for me, it was like, in a nutshell, was the boy were the BIPOC people at the Hutch, and how we have felt over the years when nobody heard, when we were judged, when we couldn't move forward, when we were going through structural barriers that impede your full being in the institution. We were the boy. And I thought that maybe, just that wolf mother, we can say that is the DEI core. Is the DEI core who is now listening, who is listening to the boy, the BIPOC people, to see what, to make us see what these branches and plants, invisible plants that were holding us back. It's that wolf is helping us to process all of that so that we can go back stronger and believing in ourselves, so that we can be part of the community in a different way. That's one view of the story for me at the Hutch. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
I can speak if that's okay with my group. I just wanted to point out, because it was sort of the flip side of that, Delia. Well, our group was, I guess, mostly me, but we discussed the ways in which the story was so unexpected for our cultural background as sort of Western people. It was sort of like, where are the grown-ups when this kid's being bullied? Why didn't they intervene and make it all okay? Or so the idea of like there being a wolf community who has this wisdom of their own, wow, that we don't pay attention to, and just the whole sort of approach of that he finds the wisdom where he needs to find it, and that the wolves can see things that are wrong, that maybe the grown-up people can't see. I don't know, there's a lot there, but that was some of it.
Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting, again, I've thought a lot about this project, the relevance of the story to this project, and the idea of, can children see as they go through whatever their connection with cancer is, can they see the doctors, the nurses, the lab people, the therapists, the counselors, can they see those? Those are my wolves. They're the ones that are they can see things other people can't see. So there's even that possibility, but that's just Roger, shaping it through his lenses, through his eyes, through his philosophy. So again, who would be the wolves in this whole process? And I really believe that the staff, the caregivers at Fred Hutch, that's certainly a way to present themselves. Here's a sore little kid. We want to be the wolves for you. We want to be the people that surround you and take care of you. So again, something like that becomes a building point that the children can connect with. You're the wolves. Okay, I get it.
We also talked a little bit about spirit.
Mhm.
And so, just this idea of spirit. I don't know if we were necessarily talking about it in connection to the story, but I think we all kind of thought, well, that's something very interesting that we can tap into and think about more. And just from a personal reflection, I recently got into like sewing, embroidery, right? And I was reading this book about it, and they described that in sort of the same way that you did, that before the needle comes up through the fabric, you don't know what's going to happen. And when the needle comes up through the fabric, you've begun to create a design when it goes back in. And that is the spirit within you. Before that happened, nothing existed, right? Your spirit had to create that existence of that piece of art. And so I found what you said really moving, and it sort of spoke to something that I had read recently, and I just thought I would share that.
Right now, I'm in the Plains area of Minneapolis working on a cultural camp. My partner is also a storyteller, and she's from the tribes here. And I said, I'll go with you. So here I am. But they have a very explicit way of explaining the complexity of being a human. 4 elements. It's called the medicine wheel: a body, a mind, emotions, and a spirit. And you need to keep those things in balance. And it's a lot of work. You got to always be working to keep things in balance. And I'm looking at a child or family struggling with cancer in the family, and it's got to be even more challenging when it's your child. But what is out of balance in that family then? And what can we, through the story, have them look at? I know that we're probably going to be wrapping up soon. But I wanted to share, because again, your insights are wonderful. I really learn from whenever people share these things in their own way, through their own vision and eyes and experience and philosophies. I'll just tell you, so I asked a bunch of little kids, like grade school kids, what do you think about this story, Dad? And I told them, and they gave a lot of wonderful little, but one little boy said, do you remember that part where the little boy was holding that little wolf, petting him? Remember, he found him and was holding him and petting him? He was holding himself. And I went, oh my gosh, that's way beyond Freudian. That's way beyond Jung. That's little kid, you're a genius, because he saw that little boy felt like that little wolf, crying, alone, shaking, afraid. And he wanted someone, hold me, let my spirit feel that you see me, that you care about me, that you love me. You'll protect me. You'll take care of me. And that was, again, I'm still staggered when I think about that little kid coming up with that observation. That's the deepest kind of human therapy we can imagine. A little child telling him, that's how that little boy felt, and that's how he wanted to be treated. So again, we tell a story like this and allow the children to find those things. Again, my job is not to explain everything to people. It's to open the doors for people to explain them to me. What did you find? What do you feel? What do you want? And I think that's really a dialogue then, when we have more than one voice carrying the conversation.
Roger, thank you so much. On behalf of all of us, we feel tremendous gratitude for you leading us through this very powerful experience. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in the Storytelling Circle, and for your thoughtful, beautiful reflections on the story. I'm excited to share with you that we are continuing these reflections with our Hutch members and members of the Indigenous community and others who choose to join us for the next Storytelling Circle with Fern Naomi Renville, who Roger knows well, on September 14th from 12 to 1 p.m. We will look to deepen and strengthen our commitment to this work and build community together. Thank you all for joining us today.